With the Green Bay Packers offseason now underway, a lot of free agency rumors have been circling around, mainly if the Packers will go out and get a true number one wide receiver. And right now, the top wide receiver on the free agency market is set to be Tee Higgins from the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of Packers fans are conflicted. There's one side that they believe the Packers should fully go out and sign Tee Higgins this offseason, but other Packers fans believe that they have enough talent in this wide receiver room for 2025. So in this video, we're going to break down Tee Higgins, what type of player he is, what that would look like if the Packers did indeed sign him this free agency, maybe how much it would cost, and the outlook of the Packers wide receiver room as a whole as we stand right now. Let's face it, the Packers 2024 wide receiver room stunk. And if you don't want to stink like the wide receiver room in 2024, that's where today's video sponsor, Mando, comes in. Mando is a whole body deodorant, so it's safe to use anywhere on your body. It's clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor up to 72 hours. Mando has two deodorant product options, the whole body stick deodorant and the whole body spray deodorant. I'm really liking this spray deodorant. I have the bourbon leather scent. Plus, all of Mando's products are baking soda free and paraben free. And as I said, I have the bourbon leather scent in terms of the spray body deodorant, but they have plenty of other scents such as Clover Woods, Mount Fuji, and Pro Sport. And guys, the Mando starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, a cream tube deodorant, and two free products of your choice, such as a mini body wash or deodorant wipes. And to top that all off, free shipping. And of course, I have a special offer for you guys. You can get $5 off your first starter pack with code PACK, P-A-C-K, at shopmando.com. That equates to over 40% off your first starter pack at shopmando.com. That's with code PACK, P-A-C-K, to get $5 off your first starter pack plus free shipping. So guys, make sure to go check out Mando. Tell them I sent you. Stay fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence with Mando. All right, so now back into the video. We have to dive down into free agent wide receiver Tee Higgins. But first, let's take a look at how the wide receiver group performed for the Packers in 2024. Myself included, I thought they would have performed a lot better here in 2024. I thought the Packers could end up with not one, but two 1,000-yard wide receivers, and they didn't have a single 1,000-yard wide receiver. Bringing up the stats on the screen, our top wide receiver was Jayden Reed, 857 yards and 6 touchdowns. And early on this season, Jayden Reed looked like a true number one wide receiver, but then really started to fall off towards the end of the season, was riddled with drops, led the Packers team in drops. Tucker Kraft was our second leading receiver, and he's a tight end. Awesome season for Tucker Kraft, don't get me wrong, but where you really expect another wide receiver to kind of be above him, considering all the talent in that room. Tucker Kraft had 707 yards. Christian Watson had 620 yards, and the sky's the limit for Christian Watson, but he tore his ACL in week 18. He's not going to be ready until at minimum week 12. So you can pretty much write off Christian Watson for the majority of 2025. So then that makes the Packers wide receiver room even thinner and need of more talent. So he was our second highest, yardage in terms of receivers. Then we have Romeo Doubs, 601 yards. And a lot of these receivers, did have injuries during the year, such as Doubs and Watson. And Doubs was out, 3 games with a concussion. And he had 601 yards. He was also suspended for a week after that whole practice fiasco, had 4 touchdowns. I think we can all say we expected more out of Romeo Doubs in 2024. Dontavian Wicks, I certainly expected more. I will 100% admit that. I still expect Dontavian Wicks to be a good receiver in this league. He also was riddled with drops. Definitely cleaned them up as the season went on. Late in the season, wasn't really dropping any passes, and he had 76 targets, 39 receptions, 415 yards, and actually, in terms of wide receivers, was second on the team in touchdowns with 5. So don't get me wrong, the talent's there. But I still think the Packers need a true number one wide receiver. Watson could become that, but he's not going to be available. And we saw how the offense suffered without Christian Watson. They didn't have that true number one guy. And defenses could use one-on-one coverage with our wide receivers and really blanket them. And Jordan Love didn't have many options to go to, especially in that Eagles game. The Packers also have Malik Heath and Bo Melton, both with sub 100-yard seasons. Now, when you take a look at this wide receiver room and why I think the Packers can go out and get a wide receiver like Tee Higgins, and a lot of you might be going, well, that's going to be a lot of money, right? It's going to be a lot of money to go out and sign Tee Higgins. While I do agree with you The Packers are barely paying anything for all of these wide receivers. Actually, all of them are under contract for 2025, minus Bo Melton, but he's an exclusive rights free agent, so the Packers will bring him back for $960,000. It's a no-brainer. It's 100% going to happen. So at that point, all 6 wide receivers, are available for 2025, minus Watson with his injury, and they're under contract for 2025. To take it a step further, the collective cap hits of all 6 wide receivers in 2025 for the Green Bay Packers is only $11,168,339. That's for all 6 wide receivers together. That's a lower cap hit than some single wide receivers in the NFL, such as Christian Kirk, Darnell Mooney, Jacoby Myers, and even Alan Lazard. So if you look at it at that perspective, the Packers are really using not a lot of money for the wide receiver position, and they're able to go out and get a number 1 wide receiver at a high APY. Because even if they go sign a receiver for $20-25 million average per year, their collective money spent on the wide receiver position will still be vastly lower than a lot of teams in the NFL, due to all of these receivers being on their rookie contracts. And at the end of the day, it's going to come down to what 2 or 3 of these wide receivers step up, or even 1 or 2, and they'll get the extensions in a couple years. Everything's going to work itself out, but right now, I just don't know if the Packers have a guy on the roster right into the 2025 season can be a true number 1 wide receiver for Jordan Love, which I think he needs at this point. So taking a look at Tee Higgins' stats over his career. Now, keep in mind, this is all under Ja'Marr Chase. So they already had their true number 1 wide receiver, and take that as you will. Maybe Tee Higgins is successful over the past, 5 seasons because he has Ja'Marr Chase in the building. That's definitely an argument to have. But at the end of the day, Tee Higgins has a lot of talent, and that much is very, very clear. His rookie season had 908 yards and 6 touchdowns. Then the next 2 seasons, 2021 and 2022, over 1,000-yard wide receiver. And that's also with Ja'Marr Chase on the roster, which is very impressive because Ja'Marr Chase is taking the majority of targets. In 2023, did only play in 12 games, a down year for him, 42 receptions for 656 yards. But it's crazy because a down year for Tee Higgins would still be, near what Jayden Reed, our top receiver, was this year. 5 touchdowns. Then most recently in 2024, Tee Higgins, 73 receptions on 109 targets, 911 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So not only would he be a number 1 wide receiver in terms of yardage, but a guy that can be utilized heavily in the red zone. And the Packers are going to need another one of those receivers with Christian Watson being absent. Taking a look at his PFF profile, Tee Higgins in 2024 had an 88.2 PFF grade, which is 5th best of 98 compatible receivers. I believe the highest grade for Packers receivers was Jayden Reed, and it might have been like a 74 or 75, just to put that into comparison. Also an 88.3 receiving grade, which is 7th best. We look at his rankings in terms of stats. He was 27th in targets with 104, 24th in receptions with 73, 28th in yards with 911. He was 5th in receiving touchdowns with 10. He only had 2 drops on the season, so Tee Higgins doesn't have a drop issue, which seemed like every receiver had last year for the Packers. He was 12.5 yards per reception, 3.1 yards after catch per reception, passer rating when targeted, 125.1, which is 8th best in the NFL. I believe Jayden Reed was actually 1st, and that's crazy given all the drops that he had as well. An average depth of target, he was 58th, 11.2. Now, you might be wondering Tee Higgins' injury history, so I'll bring that up as well. There are some reoccurring things here that are a cause for concern, especially hearing them as a Packers fan. And one thing that has popped up quite a bit is his hamstring strain/pull. You see it here, September of 2024, December of 2023, December of 2022. We go down more, January of 2021, December of 2020, so that's right around the same time there, and October of 2019 when he was in college. So it seems like hamstring issues have been an issue for him, and I know that might be very worrisome for us Packers fans because we've had plenty of hamstring injuries and issues, especially with Christian Watson. But to me, it doesn't seem like something that's going to happen all too frequently. He's also had a couple of ankle sprains, but that's nothing to worry about. But outside of that, no major injuries, just a couple hamstring pulls, a concussion, and some ankle sprains. So at this point, you might be wondering, well, what would it even cost for the Packers to go out and sign Tee Higgins? And I know a lot of people are going to go, the Packers aren't going to do it. They're not going to go out into free agency and sign a top player like that. Well, the Packers struggled at safety last season, and they quite literally went out and signed the number one safety in free agency. So it's not impossible for Brian Gutekunst to go and sign out the top player at a position he's trying to upgrade. And I do believe Brian Gutekunst is going to remain aggressive in free agency like he was last year and go out and get someone like Tee Higgins to help his offense. So we're going to look at two contract evaluations from the top two salary cap websites. That's Over the Cap and also Spot Track. So we're going to start with Over the Cap, and we'll bring it up on the screen here. And their estimated average per year is $21.8 million, which would actually be a pretty affordable contract. When you take a look at wide receivers and their average per year, it's in this column right here. You know, the top obviously being Justin Jefferson, 35 mil, CeeDee Lamb, 34 mil. So if he's getting 21 million average per year, that would put him right where he just was at, the deal he got with the Cincinnati Bengals before last season, that 1 year, $21 million deal. Now it'll probably be slightly more than this. And that's where Spot Track comes in. And Spot Track believes his calculated market value will be $25.1 million. So let's just say, let's split the difference and let's put it at about $23 million annually. That would put him at around slightly above Stephon Diggs. And Diggs is 32 years old. Right around where Calvin Ridley's at, he's 31 years old. Terry McLaurin, where he's at, he's 30 years old. All these receivers here, you see the age, right? There's not many young wide receivers getting paid a ton of money. Maybe Nico Collins. So maybe Nico Collins would be, you know, kind of a mark Tee Higgins agent looks at and goes, okay, we think we can get that type of money considering the age that he's at. And you see the comparisons here on Spot Track. Age when signed, Nico Collins, 25 years old. Average salary 24.2. Deebo Samuel, same thing. Signed at 25 years old, 23 million. Looks like an overpay. Deebo had a really down year in 2024. Chris Godwin signed it at 25 years old. Now that was, you know, a while ago, but $20 million annual. Brandon Ayuk signed his $30 million deal at 26, but I wouldn't put Tee Higgins on the Brandon Ayuk level just yet. So I really think it would be right around that 23, 24, $25 million average per year mark. And you might be sitting here going, that is way too much for a wide receiver that was playing under Jamar Chase. And I understand your argument, but when you sign a wide receiver one and the top wide receiver free agent in the market, and you need a true number one wide receiver, and I fully believe that Tee Higgins could become that. When you sign him to, say, a 4-year deal, in 2 years, $25 million for a top wide receiver is going to look like nothing. Because at that point, receivers will be making $40 million per year. And like I said, the Packers are barely paying any money for their top 6 wide receivers, just over $11 million in cap hit for 2025. Plus, the only 2 free agents after 2025, so for 2026 at the wide receiver position, will be Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. And getting Tee Higgins into the building, you know, he'll be the true number one, and we'll start to see the rest of the wide receiver room shape out. Plus, with Christian Watson, you know, he'll be hurt until at least week 12. He'll start the year on the PUP. And if he can't come back in 2025, which I think he will, but if he can't and say he's still struggling to get back and it's week 15, week 16, and the Packers just simply shut him down and keep him on the PUP, his rookie contract actually extends a year. So he wouldn't be a free agent in 2026. So really the only free agent wide receiver, if that happened after this season, if they signed Tee Higgins, could be Romeo Doubs, which at that point, who knows? We'll see what he does in 2025. But overall, if the Packers were to go out and sign a big name free agent like they did last offseason with Xavier McKinney, I feel like Tee Higgins at wide receiver is a good option. This Packers offense was starving for a wide receiver number one late in the season and then into the playoffs. And myself included, I was so confident in this wide receiver room before the season started. We're all sitting here going, the Packers don't need a number one wide receiver. They have plenty of number two wide receivers, and that will be enough. But it simply wasn't enough, and I think adding a true number one wide receiver will elevate this offense a ton. But of course, I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know down in the comments. Like everything else, there's people that are all for it, and there's people that are completely against it. I'm leaning towards I'm for it. I'm not like fully, oh my gosh, we need to go out 100%, get Tee Higgins, pay whatever it's going to cost. I think if it's affordable, right around that $22 to $23 million annually to get this guy into the building, that's where I'm at. So I'm not against it, but I'm like in the middle of, just neutral and all for it. But of course, let me know what you guys think down in the comments of this situation. Thank you guys for coming by to the channel. I'd really appreciate it if you click the subscribe button if you happen to be a new viewer or are thinking about subscribing. You won't regret it. There's Packers news this entire offseason, including free agency, salary cap, and of course the draft, all here in one spot on this channel. Appreciate you guys coming by. I'll catch you on the next one, and as always, go Pack Go.